Hi, welcome to Observations. I'm host John Walsh. Today we're having our special edition interviewing candidates for the 2021 special election for the mayor of Palm Coast. Joining me today is Doug Courtney, candidate for mayor of Palm Coast. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you very much.
Glad you could join us.
I'm glad I can be here too.
So let's roll right into it. The first question is, how long have you lived in Palm Coast?
24 years.
24 years.
Mm-hmm.
Seen any changes during those 24 years?
One or two. They stopped rolling up the sidewalks 4 years in, and I believe we left them down past 6 p.m. around 18 years ago. And yeah, we've seen quite a few changes.
Quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, pretty simple. Are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes, I am a U.S. citizen. Proud U.S. citizen, actually.
Have you always been a U.S. citizen?
Yes, I have.
Very good. Thank you. What makes you qualified to be mayor of Palm Coast? Top three?
Top three, education, background, and experience.
Very good. What do you think is the biggest issue we face as the city of Palm Coast today?
Picking the city manager.
City manager?
Mm-hmm.
So rolling into that topic, how should it go? Do you think we should hire a professional consulting firm in the business of executive search, or let the city council figure it out on their own?
I believe we need executive search. I very strongly do. I appreciate the management and the people inside of the city of Palm Coast, and I encourage them to apply as well. However, picking a city manager is probably the single most important job for a city that is a city manager type of government. A city manager is the president, basically, as people like to understand, of the organization.
If it was a private business.
If it was a private business, a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And the mayor is nothing more than the chief of the board, executive board. He's the person in charge of the board. So the city manager is the one that has to interact with the employees. The city manager is the one that hires employees, puts training programs together, decides how the day-to-day systems are going to be run, decides things like whether or not they're going to have an enemies list. These are the things that a city manager does, and these are the things he's responsible for. How we're going to interact with the people of the city of Palm Coast is going to be a direct indication of how the city manager is. Making a quick decision, not following through, not doing a background check, not inviting other people from other organizations out or other cities in to apply, denies the citizens of Palm Coast and denies the city the opportunity to pick the correct or the right or best city manager for the city. We've had a lot of problems lately. We've had a lot of controversy. There's a lot of issues inside the city council itself. Choosing the right city manager and how we're going to move forward as a city is the most important decision.
Number one priority on your list.
On the
Great.
list, yes.
And based on your answer, I could probably already tell. Do you have someone in mind now for that job?
None.
None. Great.
Totally open on it.
Let's move over to the budget. The next issue, if elected mayor, probably the first one that you'll be faced with. So first question would be, what is the largest budget that you've personally managed?
About 200 million, I believe, was part of it. I would have to say something like that.
Pretty big budget.
Yeah, but a lot of it was in one organization that we really didn't have anything much to say about. Most of it was about $20 or $30 million. Sort of like City of Palm Coast. I think the largest budget item here is the Waterworks Department, isn't something like that. And I believe the rest of the budget is, I can't remember, it's below 50 million or something like that as an actual operations. So it was a similar sort of situation where the one part of the organization was, basically an entity unto itself. We approved it, but there really wasn't much to do. The actual operations and everything to actually turn down in the lower 50 million.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. Taxes, part of the budget. Mm-hmm. Are our local taxes too high, too low, or just right?
Depends on what you want to spend the budget on. I mean, if you want to cut taxes, which everybody wants to cut taxes, I mean, but what are you going to cut? Are we going to cut out the services for the arts? We're going to no longer do grants for the arts anymore. Are we going to cut out some of the services for the sheriff's department?
Well, if you were elected mayor, how would you answer those questions?
Well, that's my point is that I would like to see where the budget is and what it's doing. I would like to see the numbers. Are we getting our money's worth for what we're spending? That's what we have to look at as a budget. Do we want to do more? I may have issues with certain things, but just arbitrarily say I'm going to cut the budget. I have to then make the decision, what are we going to cut it for? There are times, 2009, remember those times, where the city really wanted to keep some services. We had to cut them. And when you have to make those decisions because you just don't have the money anymore. Now, we have a booming economy. A lot of people may discuss that, but the fact of the matter is that our hot property values are sky high. And that's going to create a better amount of money or a bigger pot of money for our ad valorem taxes, which means there should be more money coming in for less tax rate. So if you're dealing with something like that, maybe we have an extra dollar or two to put somewhere else that we wouldn't have to have the dollar or two before. So it's not like we're dealing with a 2009 budget. We're dealing with a 2021 budget. So we have to take a look at each one of those things.
So you sort of answered the next question. Some candidates will use in their platforms, I'm going to go through the budget line item by line item. And the response already, how would you address that? How do you know it's an exception or in line?
Yeah, well, first of all, you got to ask the right people. I mean, one of the nice things we have with here is we have a lot of good departments and everything, and they actually make their budgets, as I understand, then pass them on to the city manager, presents them to us. You can actually ask them to come in. You can't talk to them directly because it's a city manager type of government, but you can ask the city manager to ask them to come in and address each one of the things. Is this something different or is this something new? Can we cut here? Why are you asking for this? In my line of work with information systems technologies, every geek, every nerd wants to have the latest computer. Every geek, every nerd wants to have the latest, application and everything. And we ask, well, why? Why do you want this? Well, it's cool. Well, I know it's cool, but why do we want it? And then we find out that, there's no real reason other than they want to keep up with it. The current system is working fine. It's doing the processing. It's doing well. There's no reason to move on because the legacy systems aren't involved in there, and we don't have to do that. We can keep what we're doing without any additional cost. This is the sort of same situation you have to apply to each one of the line items that you're dealing with. You have to look and ask the right people and ask the right questions.
Thank you. A couple of recent budget items that were approved. MedNext. Would you propose to defund MedNext?
Not now. I mean, we've really got a lot of investment into it. I mean, MedNext is a great idea that seems to be devolving. I mean, I would like to look more desperately at what they're doing here. As I understand, there were some contracts that were supposed to be signed that weren't signed, things that were done that should have been done that weren't done. This is a good idea. This is a good thing to have happen to the city of Palm Coast, but it has to be handled properly. I mean, can be a big deal. A lot of money, not only for the city, not only for the citizens of Palm Coast, but for the services and everything that can be offered to our citizens and everything like this. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because you've had a couple of glitches along the way. But man, we got to get hold of that. Yeah. We just can't just boom. Let's just get rid of it. We have to take a sharper and harder look at it.
Another big ticket item recently approved is the enhancements to the tennis center. Would you support defunding?
Right. You have to understand, I don't know exactly where that is on the process right now. What I mean is by this, if the decision has already been made and the contract signed and expectations already created, as the businessman who happened to contract with cities before, once that decision's made, you've already put your money forth and invested in the anticipation that contract would be honored. So if that has already gone down that road, no, I'm not going to ask to have it revisited because that would be a detriment to the people who have already invested in it. Howsoever, that said, if it hasn't been, honored, if it hasn't been signed, contractually obligated or anything like this, I would like to take a second look at it. One of the issues that I have is that we have been investing a lot of money into large projects, and I'm not saying it's bad, but what about the neighborhood projects? What about, we had a couple of people ask me, not a lot, just one or two, can we have another basketball court put in our neighborhood? How about a few more benches here? Why are we not investing more into the neighborhood community parks, which I think we could invest in with a whole lot less money than, what is it, 18 million?
5
million? Yeah.
North of 5 million.
North
So
of 5
phase
million.
one.
Phase one. That's what I'm trying to say, north of 5 million. On the other hand, they have a good argument on the other hand. They said, well, this is phase one, phase two. This is going to be a regional center. We're going to bring a lot of money in here. Convince me. Convince me. That's all I'm saying.
Great. Let's move on to housing.
Mm-hmm.
Palm Coast was created one house at a time. The Florida State Chamber reports we can expect that our population will increase 20 to 30,000 in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it is simply a choice between urban sprawl or high density?
No. Okay. Palm Coast was originally platted, I believe, for when I was city clerk, 375,000 plots were platted for the city of Palm Coast. We're expected to be a city of some 400,000. We've added, I don't know, what, another 100,000 plots since then. You know, so it isn't a situation between, you know, more houses and high density. We're going to be a big city no matter what. So what we have to do is we have to manage what we're going to be. There's a lot that's already here. The people are complaining. I heard the other day somebody was complaining about some of the commercial centers that was put in, and why are they doing that here? This is our neighborhood and everything. Well, it's in the plan. We've had that plan around, and I think the last time it was reviewed was 2007, 2009, and they're there because they're allowed to be there. You know, the city of Palm Coast has got a comprehensive plan that's been in the works. People have been able to look at it, understand it. It is argued about constantly. And so the high residency plus the regular residents are part of that plan. And we're going to be a big city, whether we want to or not. Right now, we're the second largest in Northeast Florida. I don't think people realize that. We have 50,000 more people in Palm Coast than they have in Daytona Beach. We have, I believe right now, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 70,000 more people in Palm Coast than they got in St. Augustine within their incorporated area. We aren't a small city. We're a large city, and we're getting larger. So I hope that sort of answers your question on that.
Great answer. Let's move on to public safety.
Mm-hmm.
Flagler County Sheriff's Office reports that when we are compared to other communities our size, staffing levels of deputies are too low by an estimated 40 deputies. Are you satisfied with the current public safety and crime levels in Palm Coast?
Who's always satisfied as long as we got crime? I mean, we always want to go to zero, don't we? I mean, that's just the attitude everybody wants to have. That said, I believe our levels right now are better than we could hope, and we could do better. My problem with that is not so much of adding more deputies. That just seems to be the standard fare. Let's just add more deputies. I think Palm Coast ought to be more involved in the decision making. One of my issues that I have is that the Sheriff's Department decides where he's going to put a precinct, and he goes and gets a building, he puts a precinct there. We hand him a check. He takes care of it, okay? And he decides we need one precinct, and that's it. That's the decision that gets made. What if we need 2 precincts? What if we need 3? Why isn't Palm Coast more involved in getting those precincts together? Why aren't we building the buildings and having him staff it? Why are we just sitting back and allow him to make those decisions about how the safety is going to be done in Palm Coast? If we're going to give a gentleman a check to do something like that, I think that we ought to be more, as a city, more involved in exactly what gets done and how it gets done. One of the issues they brought up over and over again in a lot of the areas in the United States and various countries is, and also they embraced this in Miami-Dade, Florida, was why not get certified professionals to go out on some of these calls for domestic violence or mental health issues or particularly when they have to have an issue over at the high schools or something like this. Why don't we involve these people in there? If we're going to invest more money into policing, which I have no problem doing, if it's no wanted and needed, and you're going to have to explain it to me, but why can't we include these programs as well? Why can't Palm Coast be more active in its security?
You're setting up the next question very well, Doug.
Thank you. You're welcome. I didn't read it, I swear.
Subject of mental health in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Should the city address and invest in mental health services here in Palm Coast?
Why not? That's the first question I'd ask anybody that's opposed to it. Mental health issues quite often are one of the largest problems that create crime. So if we're going to reduce crime, why don't we invest in something that will stop it? Why aren't we proactive? Why are we not investing in a lot of the things that will actually save and protect us and help us? I don't understand why we wouldn't be. That just seems to be a natural byproduct of being a responsible city, responsible citizens. Wouldn't you want to protect yourself and the people around you? And investing in mental health issues does that. So why wouldn't we want to do that?
Thank you. Move on to economic development.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have enough retail, commercial, and industrial businesses here?
No, and yes. The reason I'm saying that is that if we continue to expand, as the projection is, obviously what we have here is not enough. There's going to be another 200,000 people coming in. They're going to be able to handle that. But as we stand right now, we got a lot of retail here and a lot of places to go eat, and there's more coming in, as I understand. We also don't have enough industrial. But then again, we have to start asking ourselves, where are we going to go? One of my problems is that we have been searching for the 24 years that I've been here for the unicorn that's going to come in and build a new facility here and brand new corporate headquarters and employ 2,500 people. That's going to create another 50,000 jobs and so on and so forth. And we've been hunting for that unicorn for 24 years. And I have talked to people that do that, do those things to create. We're going to do this, Chamber of Commerce. It's going to happen this year. It's going to happen. It's going to happen next week, And I've been hearing this for 24 years, a lot of if, ands, buts, and so on and so forth. Maybe it's time that we not abandon that process, but maybe it's time that we take the blinders off and look at a new idea, a new process of what we want to do. One of the things the pandemic has taught us is remote work works. One of the things, if you read an article in the New York Times, they had an article about Bentonville, Arkansas. I don't know if you saw that or not. But in Bentonville, Arkansas, they were having a problem getting people to come into the city. Now, I don't suggest we provide incentives like they did, but what they did is provide incentives for high-paid workers who can remote work to move into their city, and which is what they did. And these people had to stay there a year or so, and they had to become citizens of the city. And what they found out is they had a lot of these people move in, and they brought with them high wages from jobs outside the city. Well, lo and behold, businesses followed high-wage people. Isn't that an amazing thing? We have people that had some money they wanted to spend, and they needed a place to spend it. Next thing you know, that they had small shops opening, mom and pop shops. They had the downtown was rebuilt. All of a sudden, they had a boom in Bentonville, Arkansas that they never had before. I'm not saying that's the only solution, but maybe it's a solution to start looking outside the basic, let's go find the next unicorn. Let's go find the next thing here.
You've almost answered the next question already, but what is the role of the city in economic development?
Role of the city is to actually to support economic development. I think one of the problems we have here in the city is a disconnect. I have to agree with one of my opponents in this race. Is one of the hardest things we have to do is get approvals for these projects that we want to actually have happen. What will happen on one part of the department of the city, all of a sudden it interferes with what happens in another part of the city, and we get things held back. The city has to be a positive message for economic development in the region and in the state. They have to look at us as this is someplace we want to go. We got a lot here. We've got a beach, we got walkways, we've got places to go, we got things to do. We're 70 minutes away from Disney World and 48 minutes from the river in Jacksonville. I mean, if we want to go and do things, we can go do things, and this is a perfect place to be. So we have to be that positive message. That's what the city is, and not only be a positive message, we have to make sure that those things that have to happen for developers happen when they need them to be. That's what the city has to be. And I'm also not saying I'm for unregulated growth. There's things that we don't want in here. There's places that I'm not going to be a rollover for every person that wants another $10,000, bailout or something like this. Let's get the businesses we want. Let's help them out, get the things that we want. Let's do the things that we have to do, but let's be that positive message.
Part of economic development in some people's mind is permitting commercial vehicles, including signs, to be parked in residential driveways after business hours.
Yeah, I know that. This is an old argument. I don't think, if you remember, Jerry Fole and Jim Holland had an argument over this when they first made the
I was here then.
Yeah, you were here then. We had a big discussion about that. Back then, when they had that discussion, remote offices and everything was a brand new idea. Most people didn't think that it was going to be one of those things that actually took off. And since then, and particularly after the pandemic, it's grown, which has made the argument change. But I think some of the basics of it are true. I don't know that how we can, at this point, ensure that we don't have somebody opening his garage and creating a shop there for developing of parts and building basically a machine shop in his garage. I don't know how we can keep a dump truck from parking there overnight. I don't know how.
Until you said dump truck, that would be more zoning.
Yeah.
But the conversation today, should commercial vehicles be allowed parked in their residential driveway after business hours? The conversation goes on to say, if your air conditioner is broken and the truck is in your driveway fixing your air conditioning, that's a welcomed visual aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But at 5 o'clock, he can't pull the truck across the street and park it in his driveway.
Yeah. Some of this I do believe is a little on the edge of ridiculous. I think that we need to actually work with this a little bit. I don't see where this is an either or. I have a neighbor that has an electrical company, okay? And he works for an electrical company every day. And every night he comes in with his electrical company truck, and he actually has to put a tarp on it with, and I'm like, that's not offending me. Just leave the tarp off. If somebody's doing something like that he's bringing his truck home because he works and a sheriff comes home and parks in there, or like I said, the electrical company or the guy that's doing the air conditioning, and this is just part of his job. It's this toolkit. You understand what I'm saying? It's this toolkit. That's what he works with. No, I'm not going to sit there and call the code enforcement on him and ask him to do that. Now you bring your dump truck in there. You bring your cab from your 18-wheeler. I got an issue with that. You're going to bring in some of those things. I've got a lot of issues with that. So, but I don't see where this is an either or, just as Jerry Full and Bill Venny and them didn't see it either. This is something that has to be created inside the ordinance itself, so we can do both at the end and make sure that the dump trucks aren't here, but allow my neighbor to go ahead and park his vehicle that he does electrical work with.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. It's not unique to our community, but community decisiveness. How would you balance the recommendation of city staff when they seem to be at odds with a vocal minority's opinion at a city meeting?
We have to rely on our city staff to a great degree. This is one of the problems that we have in courtrooms when we deal with judges and lawyers and sheriff's officers that give testimony. To a certain degree, they're bound by their oaths and by the jobs that they do and the professionalism alone to give the opinion that we are required them to give. We're paying them to tell us, is this right or is this wrong? And to a large extent, we have to lean, if we're going to believe in our government, we have to lean on their side and listen to what they say. That doesn't mean they get exclusivity. That does mean that the minority gets to be heard. Okay, but we aren't going to sit there and listen to a vocal minority that when I sit there and have a raft of reasons and I have a raft of information and data that says from our council from our city staff that we paid for to get us this information and gave us this information, and this is what it is. And I have a vocal minority over here that's just parroting what they may have heard for the moment from a recent Facebook posting. I would have to lean very much heavily towards the city staff than I would have to live to the vocal minority.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Last question, all about you. If elected mayor, what do you hope you will be remembered for?
Not dying in office, I hope. No, what I really said, I do hope is that I was able to re-envision the future for Palm Coast. When I was here and I was city clerk, one of the greatest things I got to do was work with that city hall, with the first city council, and put into place in words and in deeds the vision that we had for Palm Coast, which has become today what it is. I think that at this point in time, because of our growth, because of the pandemic, because of a lot of things that have happened, that we have not adhered so closely to the same vision. I don't necessarily think we have to, but I think that we need to re-envision what we see for our city, where we plan to go, what we want to do. And what I'd like to understand is when I'm no longer mayor and everything, that I worked with city council and the staff to re-envision a great city and a beautiful city that people still want to come to, they still want to live in, and they still like to be here because of what we've become.
Doug, thank you for joining us today. Great interview, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. It was enjoy. I had a great time.
This special election podcast is brought to you by the Joe Mullins Companies. Live, shop, play.